Great white shark. A lone hunter who attacks with stealth and speed, like a tiger with razors for teeth. Literally billions of creatures inhabit the ocean. Some are the most deadly on Earth. The venom of the box jellyfish can kill a man in less than 4 minutes. The sea is the most powerful force in nature. Some material you are about to witness may be disturbing to some viewers. There is no escaping the terrors of the deep.
For thousands of years, adventurers have sailed off into the unknown, hoping to return with tales of conquest and glory. But instead, they often came home with truly frightening stories. Encounters with enormous sea creatures that could devour a ship, waves so violent they could tear a vessel apart, and even vicious predators that would prey upon a human being. Over time, these incredible stories grew to mythic proportions, the stuff of legends, or so we thought. But as we discovered more about the mysterious ocean, we realized there was truth to these tales, and the sea was a violent and hostile world more terrifying than anyone could possibly imagine. Before the age of dinosaurs, sharks ruled the ancient seas. For 450 million years, they have survived and adapted in remarkable ways. There is one above all others that haunts the dreams of men, one that hides and waits and strikes and kills with amazing swiftness and ferocity. The great white. This shark is grace, power, and predatory efficiency on a grand scale. Over 20 feet long, more than 3,000 pounds, and up to 5 rows of teeth that exert a biting force of 20 tons per square inch. For centuries, man has feared what the white shark represents, a being that could literally eat a human alive. In Northern California, Eric Larson still surfs in spite of the fact that in 1991, he was in the jaws of one of the great predators just a few miles from this spot.
The first thing I experienced was the sensation of all the water underneath me rising, and thought something very large is coming up underneath me. And my first thought was maybe it's a whale, maybe it's a big elephant seal. That was only maybe 0.2 of a second. The next thing I knew, I looked down and saw the teeth cutting into my leg and clamping down. I looked at the jaws, I looked at the teeth, I could see the lips kind of curling back and exposing the gums. I had the feeling that just simply touching a shark's tooth against your skin would cut it open like a surgical knife. I reached down with both hands and tried to pry his jaws off of my leg. I managed to just kind of cock my leg enough that I could rip it out of his mouth. And I went off my board into the water, and he ended up having both of my arms in his mouth. I was looking essentially right into the jaws, straight into the stomach cavity. And I remember thinking, gosh, there's really a lot of room in there. I managed to rip my right arm out of his mouth and hit him as hard as I possibly could. I was completely adrenalized. After I thumped him, he let go of my left hand, and I thought I might be okay at that point. And Then I experienced a very violent whipping sensation. The shark had somehow become entangled in the leash that connected my right ankle to my surfboard, and I was pulled underwater quite violently, maybe 5 to 10 feet underwater. And at that point, the leash broke. I looked up, and I could see my surfboard silhouetted on the surface.
Eric struggled upward, climbed onto the board, and began paddling towards shore. Trailing blood, he rode a wave in on his stomach. He joined the nearly 80% of great white shark victims who lived to tell of their attacks, but only after 250 stitches and 135 metal staples.
95% of the attacks in California have all been a one-bite ordeal, where the shark came up, seized a person, shook or held on for a second, and then let go.
Most attacks are a case of mistaken identity. Experts believe that the great whites sometimes incorrectly perceive surfers as their favorite food. Elephant seals and sea lions floating on the surface of the water. According to the International Shark Attack File, over 500 people have been shark attack victims in the last decade, and the numbers appear to be on the rise. About half of those occurred in U.S. waters. Northern California is statistically the white shark attack capital of the world. It's an area known to experts as the Red Triangle. Just 25 miles outside of San Francisco's Golden Gate lie the rocky Farallon Islands. This is the western point of the Red Triangle. Here, during the fall calving season of the elephant seal, white sharks assemble in one of the greatest concentrations in the world. Scott Anderson and Ken Goldman photograph and study white sharks in the wild. They stand by on the shore, waiting for the shark to strike.
When a great white shark attacks a seal, it is a surprise attack. They're an ambush predator. They sneak up on the seal when the seal's unaware. It's a very violent encounter, and usually the seal is killed almost instantly. We see a lot of seals actually with their heads bitten off in the first bite. Lots of blood in the water, gulls hovering over.
Anderson and Goldman rushed to the point of attack in a tiny 17-foot boat to observe the feeding at an alarmingly close range.
Yeah?
After the initial strike, the shark waits up to 20 minutes before feeding, perhaps to make sure its prey is dead. At this time, it is often joined by other white sharks. Here, working in their small boat, Scott and Ken put their beliefs to the test.
Why don't you stick them? And once the feeding begins, the sharks are predictable in that they will approach the prey and bite it very deliberately rather than this violent encounter that you first see. So we've been able to separate out the attack behavior and the feeding behavior. It's quite different.
It's actually very exhilarating to be around them and see them in a natural state. They're very cautious, curious, and leery, so they'll swim around your boat, they'll roll on the side, they'll give you a little bit of a look. They're kind of checking you out, but never any aggression by them towards us.
Most people imagine that this would be a horrifying place to be, and granted, if you fell in the water, it would be. But being in a boat, you are separated from what it's like to be prey, in that a boat is an inanimate object, and they will bump a boat or whatever and realize it's not food.
According to these two researchers, a practice known as chumming is in large part responsible for the white shark's notorious reputation. In order to record the great fish, filmmakers attract the sharks with plenty of animal and fish parts, fish oil, and blood. That is chumming.
And what you've done by chumming the water is you've altered the behavioral state of the fish. When you see white sharks on film, you've generally got them biting at almost anything they come across. There's blood all over their face, and the perception is that this is the way the white shark acts all the time.
The white shark is a wary animal. It's not a crazy, biting, killing machine. A white shark may only feed once or twice in a month, and so those teeth being shown biting at things constantly is misleading.
Great white sharks are apex predators. This means they feed on other creatures. No creatures feed on them. Although their ancestry dates back millions of years, great whites are a highly evolved animal. They give birth to live young, 3 to 5 feet long, and through the research of Goldman and Anderson, we now know these predators are not cold-blooded killers, but are actually warm-blooded animals. For man, the great white shark is the most feared animal in the sea, but the same traits that incite fear also inspire awe.
The animal really could have eaten me, but it didn't. It cut me some slack. I hope that great white is still out there. Hope it's swimming around, getting a few seals now and then, and hope it's doing shark things.
Great white shark. But this is an animal as beloved as a shark is feared. This is a killer with a smile.
Like watching him. So just about anything.
We think we know the orca, or killer whale, as a friendly giant, the greatest attraction at oceanariums, a gargantuan playmate of skilled human trainers. But this social marine mammal is in fact the greatest hunter in the ocean.
It is big, it is fast, it is powerful, and it is enormously smart. They can catch and kill absolutely anything and everything in the ocean.
From the Arctic to the Antarctic, they roam the seas without fear in packs called pods. The pod is a matriarchy. Offspring often stay with their mothers for life. The killer whale's dominance in the ocean is so great that they are the most widely distributed large animal in the world.
The largest killer whales known are the big males that can weigh about 10 or 12 tons and measure up to 35 feet long. The largest great white shark ever measured was 23 feet long, and at that length would weigh about 3.5 tons. The brain of a 32-foot-long killer whale is that big. The brain of a 23-foot-long great white shark is that big.
Their great intelligence allows the killer whales to adapt rapidly and exploit any food source that is plentiful. In the Pacific Northwest, they dine on salmon. In Norway, they herd and feed on herring. But they are capable of hunting and killing much larger game. In this rare and startling footage, over 24 killer whales hunt the largest creature in the sea, a blue whale. Scientists from the Hub SeaWorld Research Institute were flying over Mexico's Sea of Cortez counting swordfish when they spotted this attack. They could see the violence from 5 miles away.
You can automatically see that they know what they're doing. They're positioning individuals in particular places. Killer whales have enormously complex systems of communication. So presumably, the killer whales are communicating something to one another, sort of like you take the left flank, I'll take the right flank.
With nearly military precision, the killer whales keep the blue near the surface and force it to slow down. Smaller killers bite at its head and tail, so necessary for survival. After 5 hours of unrelenting attack, the killer whales have opened a huge wound on the side of the blue whale. Now they abandon the assault, probably leaving the great beast to die.
Sometimes they throw it up into the air, sometimes they flip it up with their tails. It's a terrifying.
Pups, this mystifying event occurs. A killer whale swims in with the last capture of the day and gently returns the pup to its herd. one animal the killer whale seems to have little taste for is the human creature. It is in the best interest of both species. Since they don't seem to be interested in killing us, we feel little need to kill them. The master of the sea lives in harmony with the master of the land. There are billions of creatures who inhabit the sea, from microscopic bacteria to the largest animal ever to have lived on Earth, the blue whale. Most are docile creatures, asking only to be left alone. They only mount their defenses when an intruder blunders into them. But their retaliation can be swift, and often it can be deadly.
Next, encounters with deadly sea creatures.
Imagine hearing the call of the road, not the road itself.
Forced many of its inhabitants to evolve with potent poisons and other brutal ways to overcome their prey. Although they didn't evolve to kill people, it can still happen in an instant. Our best defense in the water is to stay aware and informed of these dangerous creatures. The world of dangerous aquatic animals extends to the oceans surrounding Australia. Here, vast tropical reefs offer a submarine panorama that seems to vibrate and sparkle with a never-ending array of colors and alien shapes. But the graceful forms and exotic colors are also home to terrifying reptiles.
The largest and probably the most dangerous of the reptiles living in the ocean is the saltwater crocodile, which attains a length of about 22 feet, and it has a set of very vicious jaws. These crocodiles have the ability to go out some 200 miles to sea, and if you encounter them, you've got a real problem.
They are ancient, cold-blooded animals that have roamed the sea and shore for over 50 million years. Weighing up to 2,000 pounds, few creatures have evolved better equipped for tearing flesh and killing than the saltwater crocodile.
They are certainly killers. There's no such thing as a vegetarian crocodile. Everything they eat has been alive fairly recently. If they didn't kill it, they found something that was already dead. But if they can kill it, they will. And if there are human beings available, they will probably attack a human being.
Although attacks by saltwater crocodiles on humans are not common, they will happen without warning.
It's usually lurking in a place that you don't always suspect an encounter. So that the crocodile will come out, and when he finally makes an attack, a rush, he's on the move, and it's with a lot of power. So there's a heavy impact that is made there, and then when the crocodile clamps down his jaws, why, it's curtains for you.
Able to puncture the metal hull of a boat like a soup can, the crocodile attacks with a bite that brings down 18 tons of pressure between each tooth.
The teeth of the crocodile are designed for tearing, grasping, not so much for cutting, but grabbing onto. And once this happens, the crocodile then takes you and goes through a twisting, twirling motion very rapidly. And this is done to drown the victim. And as you can see, you have little or no chance of getting away from these teeth once it grabs hold.
All told, over 100 people meet their death in the jaws of this fearsome predator each year. And victims rarely live to report their encounter. Death is swift, and the result is gruesome. As ferocious a predator as the crocodile is, there are creatures in the ocean that can kill with only a touch. They are the jellyfish. Drifting through the currents, they are fragile creatures. They mesmerize and shimmer like deep water jewels, but never be fooled by a jellyfish. Their grace and beauty go hand in hand with injury and death. This Australian swimmer was killed when he encountered the stinging tentacles of a ghostly creature called the Australian box jellyfish.
The Australian box jelly, also known as the sea wasp, has been known to kill people in minutes. If you come into contact with these stinging cells that are on the tentacles, some people break out in a terrible, painful rash that lasts for days, and other people find that the response to the sting is such that it kills them.
Every summer along the northeast coast of Australia, thousands of deadly box jellyfish are dragged from the waters and special nets are erected in an effort to protect vulnerable swimmers from injury or worse. Lifeguards here are specially trained to deal with the consequences. The box jellyfish sting is so powerful and toxic that it can stop a man's heart in seconds. It needs this power to instantly paralyze its food. Since the jellyfish is more than 90% water, even the slightest movement of a fish in its stomach could damage the delicate creature. The box jellyfish delivers its deadly poison with its tentacles. They are roughened by hundreds of microscopic stinging cells which fire tiny harpoons into its victim. Each of these specialized cells contains a thread coiled up inside at over 150 times normal air pressure. When they contact the skin of a victim, they explode, driving out the harpoon-like threads. Then they inject their paralyzing toxin. This is a jellyfish sting.
The sting of the Australian box jelly is a very, very painful experience because it literally rips up, and you have lines wherever tentacles have crossed your arms, your legs, your abdomen.
While inside their net, Australians swim just out of reach of one of the most poisonous creatures in the sea. But outside, a hawksbill turtle, immune to the poison, quietly dines on this deadly jellyfish. Here, nature reveals that every creature has its place in the ocean, just as we must remember ours.
Next, battling the awesome power of the sea.
The long dreamt of conquering the oceans and taming their ancient adversary, but the sea guards its privileges harshly, teaching each new generation the folly of challenging its supremacy. Tentacle tip to tentacle tip. But we now know that these shy creatures are basically harmless to humans and only use their suckers and tentacles to pry open shellfish. Another frightening-looking sea creature is the manta ray. It is more than 20 feet long and it can literally leap out of the water. Because of its horn-like fins, sailors nicknamed it the devilfish.
In fact, they were considered extremely dangerous, and there are many written descriptions of manta rays grabbing the anchor chains of anchored ships and dragging them off into the deep to do who knows what with the sailors.
In many cultures, there is a belief in creatures that are half man, half fish, mermaids. Long ago, seamen were often warned that these seductive sirens would lure lustful sailors to a watery grave. It was thought that most of the merpeople sightings were actually seals and most likely manatees. Looking at a pig-eyed and mustached manatee makes you wonder just how desperate or drunk these sailors were. Even Columbus on his voyage to the New World logged that he had seen mermaids, but thought that they would have been more attractive. More than likely, many of the sea monster myths began when ancient people found fossil remains of prehistoric marine reptiles. Or could some prehistoric sea beast have fought off extinction and still been swimming in the Mediterranean during the age of the Greeks? Or could one still be living today in the world's most famous monster's home, Loch Ness?
I stopped the car because I saw something strange in the loch.
And there it came out of the loch was this huge shape, massive shape.
It would slow up and then really speed up quite quickly. It was like a predatory sort of motion.
And it then zopped back into the loch, and then the loch was flat calm.
Many descriptions of the Loch Ness Monster keep supporting the idea that it's a prehistoric sea-going lizard like the plesiosaur. A London-based computer graphics company, Digital Pictures International, consulting with British paleontologists, has created this startling image of just such a creature swimming in the loch. But really, how could a thing this big keep from being found?
What you see in what appears to be a lake, this also has an outlet that goes into the ocean. So you don't know what has come in there, what not. And for a person to say with any degree of certainty that there's absolutely not a Loch Ness Monster, I think that's stretching, because I think there still is the possibility that there's something that's coming in from deep water. How is it that everybody sees a similar object? I think the jury's still out on the Loch Ness Monster.
Other familiar creatures such as the mako shark have survived virtually unchanged for millions of years, so why not Nessie? There is another great mystery that washes up on shore now and then. The remains of a classic sea monster that actually does exist, but has always managed to elude all who look for it.
The reality of giant squid is much more interesting than all the myths and all the legends, because these are huge animals. Because they've never been seen alive in their natural habitat. The largest one ever measured was nearly 60 feet in length. A number of specimens have been recorded at 55 feet. Now, mind you, that most of that length is in the two long feeding tentacles, the two tentacles that are used for capturing the prey.
Some of the giant squid specimens were found in the stomachs of sperm whales. One can only imagine the titanic battles between these two undersea giants. For the most part, though, it's impossible to separate fact from fiction. There are all sorts of legends of giant squids attacking sailing vessels, but the creature continues to elude today's scientists. Maybe we'll find a live one someday, and maybe something nobody is expecting will be found in the process.
Even though today we have wonderful technology, there are still many, many creatures yet to be discovered. Some of them, or perhaps most of them, are probably fairly small. But there's no reason to believe that they're all small. There's reason to believe that there can be some very large animals yet undiscovered.
For example, in 1976, scientists first discovered a huge deep-sea shark they named Megamouth. Only 5 more of these strange creatures have been spotted since this first encounter. Megamouth has offered another glimpse of what inhabits the totally alien world at great depths, a world that continues to astound us.
Despite all of the oceanographic information that we have available, which is enormous, we still have to come down to the fact that less than 1% of the ocean has been explored. So we don't know really what's out there. There's still a lot of things yet to be discovered. And it's always the issue of having the right person at the right time with a camera to record this very phenomenal creature. So this is where we sit in terms of ocean monsters.
To purchase a videocassette copy of tonight's exciting program, Terrors of the Deep, please call 1-800-762-9990. The price is $19.98 plus $3.95 for shipping and handling. This special collector's edition is only available by calling 1-800-762-9990. Call now.
Presenting Alka-Mints. For heartburn, they not only
off the boat, he will be one of the few survivors.
I felt that there was something around my ankle that caught my leg. It was very heavy, and it pulled me down very quickly, down into the depth. I was running out of air, so I prepared myself to die at that moment. And I started to try to think about my parents and my sisters, and their children, to say goodbye to them. Things around me started to change. I started to feel warm in my body, and the water that until now had been very black and cold started to become light blue, like in the Caribbean or something. I had the life jacket, so I went upwards. I fainted at that moment, so the next moment I feel anything is when I'm at the surface again.
Along with 15 others, Sarah, Kent, and Paul struggle into an upside-down life raft. Their ordeal is just beginning. Ahead lie 5 nightmarish hours.
I was washed overboard, and my life jacket was ripped off me completely. So I was just hanging on by a small piece of rope on the outside of the raft, and I found another life jacket, put it over my head, but I couldn't tie a knot. It seemed forever to actually tie that knot. It was just so numbingly cold. And I could think clearly about what I needed to do, but physically I was totally incapable.
Later on that night, more people on board were to freeze to death or actually drown, also inside the raft. Those didn't have the strength to keep up. They fell under the surface of the water inside the raft. The only word that actually came over their lips during the late hours of that night, it was appi in Estonian, or help in English, or hjälp mig in Swedish.
I could hear them all the night, even though I couldn't see them. And I could feel them too. They were around us all the time. This is hard, but actually I think they helped us too, because their bodies, they give us some warmth, some heat. So